What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I am here today to do my preview video for tomorrow's game against the Washington Redskins. It is an away game for us, so you know they are going to have the home field advantage. So obviously going into this game, that's one thing that they do have an advantage over us on. But I mean, not that we would really have much of a home field advantage if it was played in Miami, since the crowd size seems to be pretty small overall, and or dominated by the other team. Although I was told that by somebody in the comment section that apparently ticket prices have been discounted, or are at least even, if it wasn't like a actual like discount, prices have dropped like $10 or whatever. So I guess that's good. I would say that's not anywhere close to enough, because it doesn't match anywhere near what the fans and stuff have to go through. But I mean, it's something, I suppose. But anyway, so obviously, for this video, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give you the league statistics. I'll give you the stats from each of our previous games. So we played the Chargers. They played the Patriots, who obviously the Patriots destroyed them. So that is in part why their stats are so bad. They are obviously a bad team, and they are 0-5, of course, at this point. But even comparatively, we are worse across the board, and our point differential is it's not as bad now, because they just lost to the Patriots. I think it was 33-6, if I remember. So that's a point differential of what, 27. Prior to that, there was a difference in point differential between us and the Redskins of, I believe, 81, which would mean that their point differential got worse by 27 points than it was, which would drop the difference between point differentials between us and the Redskins by 27. So that means that the difference between us shouldn't be 81 anymore. It would be what is that, 54? But that's still, so it should be right around there, because I'm not 100% if 81 was where they were at before, but they did just lose by 27 points. So their point differential on the season just got 27 points worse than what it was. However, that still only would put them at, I don't know. I don't know what their point differential is. I'm not trying to do that math right now in my head. All the rest of the math was pretty easy. I don't feel like doing that math right now and figuring out what it is. But we're still 54 points, or over 50 points for sure worse in point differential than they are going into this game. Right? And obviously too, the league standings and stuff still bear that out as well. I mean, we're pretty much last in almost every single category, but they are in every single category across the board. They are better than us. Anyway, but that stuff is important context, right? So they did just get demolished by the Patriots, so that has part to do with it. And they are getting ready to play us, which is a lesser team. Obviously, we're the worst team in the league at the moment, so they should theoretically have a better opportunity there. They are a bit banged up, as we are. We have a ton of guys, and there was actually a roster move actually made today. Nick Needham, cornerback Nick Needham, was brought up to the active roster, and safety Doug Middleton was waived. Now remember, Bobby McCain is super banged up. Xavier Howard is now on the injury report with a knee. Johnson Batamosi's on there. Rashad Jones is on there. So they have, I think I saw, there was a tweet that said we have 6 defensive backs listed as questionable going into this game. Some of them are not going to be playing. I would venture to guess that at least 2 or 3 of those guys will probably not play. I'd say Bobby McCain is a likely pick there. Rashad Jones probably not. Jamal Wiltz probably not. Johnson Batamosi probably not. There is potential that Xavier Howard could be one of those guys that is inactive. You know, perhaps just to save him from getting injured further, or, you know, whatever. But I mean, if he doesn't play, then that obviously seriously hinders our secondary. And frankly, all these guys just being injured to begin with lessens their play, because even if they make it onto the field, they're not going to be at 100%. So our secondary is taking a massive hit. Now let's also note that most of the injuries are coming on the defensive side of the ball, and they are in high percentage soft tissue injuries and things of the sort. And so, again, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the season when all this started, that the defense is going to be out there playing way too long, and they're going to start getting hurt in large numbers. And that's terrible for the overall season and helps to ensure that we're going to end up 0-16, because the defense overall is our strong suit. Our offense is absolutely garbage. So, now you could say that they played better last week, and certainly the past 2 weeks they, you know, held in there for a little bit in the first half. But I would say that a lot of that definitely has to do with the game plan that they put together. So, you know, that could be a positive to say that there was a good game plan in place. But once those scripted plays are done, you know, they didn't perform too well. And certainly in the second half of those games, without question, the rails they just came off the rails altogether. So, also too, if you look at, once we get into these statistics, I mean, if you look at the areas where we could potentially have, you know, an advantage, unfortunately, there's, you know, counteracting factors. So let's get into this, right? So let's get into the statistics, right? And we'll talk about that and evaluate that, right? So right now we're 0-4, they're 0-5. Obviously that's in part because we just had a bye week. So let's also keep in mind that their statistics are over 5 games, ours are over 4. So we're still basically worst in the league in almost every single category, and we've played 1 less game than almost everybody else except for whoever else had a bye week in week 5, right? So keep that in mind, because that is also important context. All right, so league standings for both teams. Points per game. We have 6.5 points per game so far. That's 32nd in the league. Now, the Washington Redskins, they are at 14.6 points per game, which is 30th in the league. Okay, so obviously not good, but if both teams hold true to their current league standings, right, then obviously they'll win there in that regard. Why? Because 14.6 points is more than 6.5, right? But their offense is clearly up to this point better than ours, right? Because yards per game, we're at 225, which is 31st in the league. They're at 281.6, which is 28th. Passing yards per game, we're at 173.2, which is 31st. Washington is at 212.8, which is 26th. Rush yards a game, we're at 51.8, which is 32nd, and they're at 68.8, which is 27th, right? But we also have a run defense that is failing miserably. We did better overall last week for sure. We were at over 200 points per game. We dropped that to 175.8, but we're still giving up way too much. And now our secondary is drastically hurt as well, in addition to the rest of the guys that are getting worn out and beat up on that defense across the board, right? So that is a major concern. Also, I mean, our offense has been pretty putrid to this point, but they do have a really strong defensive line, as we talked about, and with Kerrigan and Deron Payne and Matt Ioannidis and a few of these guys that they have on there, and they have potential. Again, we're going into this game with probably our 5th different lineup for the offensive line. Allen Hurns does come back, which is a bonus, but Jakeem Grant is likely to be out. You know, he is one of the guys that's you know, potentially not going to be there. You know, so unfortunately, there's also a lot of potential for our offense to continue failing. Real quick, let me jump over, though, to the injury report. So we did not rule anybody out yet as the officially on the injury report, but we do have 11 players that are questionable. The list includes the 4 players who missed the game against the Chargers on September 29th because of injuries. Guard tackle Jesse Davis with an elbow, so we're not sure if he's even going to play quite yet because he was questionable. Bobby McCain with a shoulder and hamstring. I think it's likely he actually probably won't play because I think that shoulder injury is really what's super concerning to me, because they said it's a separated shoulder. So but Bobby McCain, both of those guys are big hits. Albert Wilson with a calf hip, that's a big hit to our offense. Jamal Wiltz, cornerback, with a groin, another soft tissue injury there, right? And like Bobby McCain, his hamstring, that's a soft tissue. Let's see, but that's a pretty big, the groin injury is a pretty big one for our cornerback, so that is concerning. They were all 4 limited in practice all week. I mean, really what it comes down to, honestly, is at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who the inactives are. So who they actually decide to keep out of the game for sure, right? We don't have that. We're not going to have that until tomorrow. So that'll be super interesting to see who the actual inactives for this game are going to be. And then, but aside from that, the guys who do end up playing is going to be super important too, because they are really banged up. So let's take Bobby McCain, for example. If Bobby McCain plays, the reports are that not only does he have a soft tissue injury with his hamstring, which is a pretty big issue for a safety, which is what he's playing right now, although he's a true slot corner, that's where he should be. But that soft tissue injury is a big deal already by itself for a player at that position. It saps his speed, his recovery ability, lots of things, right? But then the reports are that his shoulder injury is a separated shoulder. That's an injury that Rashad Jones has had on multiple occasions, that he's had surgery for on multiple occasions. He has had surgery now on both of his shoulders for separated shoulder. Well, actually, to be fair, I think one of them was a torn labrum, and I think the other one was a separated shoulder. But anyway, both major shoulder injuries. They've said that he doesn't need to have shoulder surgery on it now, but if he plays with it, that injury could get vastly more worse, or vastly worse, right? It could get exponentially worse. Especially playing at safety. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Xavier Howard, his injury is a knee injury. Okay, so if they don't keep him out, this is a tough one. Do you keep him in because you need him on defense? For sure, without question. But there's a potential for making that worse. And if it ended up being like, I'm telling you, man, this relationship is super thin as it is, right? The fact that he has a contract for the next few years, do not take that as any kind of security. I mean, first of all, just look at every other contract and every other situation that's ever happened in the NFL. So there's that overwhelming evidence, but also they structured his contract, as there have been a few reports out that have talked about. They structured his contract in a way that actually would be pretty friendly to other teams if they decided to take him. And he doesn't care about that. He's getting his money no matter what. So if he goes to another team, because some team will take him, but he also doesn't want to waste the prime years of his career, and he also doesn't want to take a chance of a major injury that could potentially lose him money or potential suitors for other teams. That's a big deal for him, right? So this relationship is super fragile, and I'm telling you, one major injury scare, and the injury right now to his knee could be minor, but if it gets bad enough, I'm telling you, he's gonna be like, yeah, dude, this is not worth it. Especially if we then continue to lose, and then especially if we have embarrassing losses to at least to the strong opponents that we have coming up, right? Like, because I actually don't think that the Redskins are gonna blow us out. I don't even think, I don't think that they'll get to mini blowout status, which I call 15 to 24 points. A full blowout is 25 points or more. 15 to 24 point difference is a mini blowout. But anyway, but I do think that there's a substantial chance that we lose this game by at least a touchdown, potentially even 10 or 14 points. And, especially with the level of these injuries. Let's continue on with the injuries, though. In addition to the injury report Friday was running back Kalen Ballage, who was listed as questionable with a foot injury. So our offense gets weaker there, even though, yes, he has been struggling, but it still either potentially removes him from the game if he was, then inactive, or, limits him while he is on the field because of a foot injury, right? And so he is still one of the guys on this team, right? Even if you want to make the argument that he's struggling and so on and so forth, or that he sucks, whatever, he's still one of the players that's on this team, and it's still one less body or one weakened body because he's, not playing at 100% because he's injured, whatever, and that still does hurt this team overall. I mean, even if you just wanted him to block all day, that still hampers his ability. The other players listed as questionable were cornerback Johnson Batamosi with an ankle, which was a new addition, wide receiver Jakeem Grant with a hamstring, linebacker Trent Harris with a foot, cornerback Xavier Howard with a knee, safety Rashad Jones with an ankle, and cornerback Chris Lamons with a toe. All 6 were limited all week except for Batamosi, who was a full participant Wednesday before being limited the past 2 days. Washington ruled out 5 players Friday, including tight ends Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis, both with concussions, which are pretty substantial. Them losing those tight ends is a big deal. Also ruled out were linebacker Josh Harvey-Clemons, not really sure who he is, hamstring, guard Wes Martin with a chest injury. That is a pretty big one, actually, because I think he is in their starting lineup, I'm pretty sure. And safety Deshazer Everett with an ankle. Veteran tackle Donald Penn was listed as questionable with a hamstring. So they do have some significant injuries, certainly not as widespread or as potentially significant as ours. Again, we do have to see, although those guys were officially ruled out, whereas all of our guys were listed as questionable. Although again, it will be important to see what the inactives look like going into this game. But anyway, let's get back into the statistics, though. So defensive league standings, we are currently giving up, we've given up 163 points, whereas the Washington Redskins have given up 151. So we're 32nd in the league in that regard, but they are 29th, right? And they've given up 151 points, which just got ballooned because of the Patriots, who just scored 33. So that is important context. So that and again, they've played one more game than us. So that's 151 points in 5 games. We've given up 163 points in 4 games. We're not going to score, 30, I'm sorry, but we are not going to score like 20, 30 something points going into this next game. That shit is not going to happen. But anyway, so and their number was 33 points less than what it is now, which they were at. So through 4 games, the Washington Redskins were, let's see, quick math. So that's 120, 118. So through 4 games, the Washington Redskins had given up 118 points. We had given up 163 through 4 games. Okay. And they do have a very strong defensive line and defensive front 7. And actually they're, once we get into the defensive statistics from the last game, they actually had damn good defensive statistics and sacked Brady, I think, like 4 or 5 times. If they can sack Brady 4 or 5 times, I'm pretty scared for Josh Rosen. And there's a high potential that they manhandle our offensive line. Again, potentially the 5th different lineup this season. I mean, that spells some pretty potential disaster for, and so this might be a weak opponent overall compared to the entire league, but there's still a NFL level talented team and so on and so forth, right? They didn't have the massive purge we did in this season. They still have a lot of really talented guys, especially across that defensive front 7, which could cause massive havoc for us tomorrow. And so, but I also don't think it's going to be a super high scoring game. Anyway, let's go through the rest of these statistics. So yards allowed, we've given up 472 per game. That's 32nd in the league. Washington gives up 407.8, which is 28th. So again, still better than us, and through 5 games. Pass yards allowed, we've given up 296.2, which is 31st. They've given up 263.8. Which is 23rd. Rush yards allowed, we've given up 175.8, which is 32nd, and they've given up 144, which is 28th. Last game, we had 283 total yards. They had 223. Again, though, against the Patriots, who are a really strong team, and their defense is looking just as strong as it did last year, if not better, which goes to show you that, yes, Brian Flores was there, and yes, he called plays, but they didn't really need him, and it wasn't really him. It's not Brian Flores' magic that made that defense what it was. Their defense is spectacular because of the players they have, and Belichick, and primarily Belichick, and then the sum of the other coaches, for which he was a part and deserves some credit, but not anywhere near the level of credit that most people are giving him. His contribution to those efforts was not that spectacular. Anyway, passing yards per game, we had 211 last game. They had 78, which but I venture to guess, especially with our massively beat up secondary, they will be able to surpass 78 yards passing. I find it exceptionally difficult to believe that we're going to be able to hold them to that. So I expect a massive uptick there, a pretty substantial uptick there. Now, rushing yards, we only had 72. They had 145. I don't think that we might hold them to less than that even, but I think that they'll probably still have a solid ground game. They do have Adrian Peterson and then a couple other young guys that are performing well. He's not so much, but he is a proven veteran back. And then they do have a couple young guys who are actually performing. After all, they did have 145 yards on the ground against the New England defense. We were both 4.2 yards per play. In our previous game, we both lost a fumble. They did throw an interception. We were 20% on 3rd down, which is obviously terrible. They were 9% though. But again, that goes to the credit mostly of that immense Patriots defense. As much as I hate to give the Patriots credit for anything, their defense is on fire. I mean, they held them to 6 points. Like, the amount of their defense is just shutting almost everybody down. Good teams too, not just us. They, so their defense is on fucking point. Anyway, time of possession, but that's important context, right? 29 minutes and 4 seconds for us, 28 minutes and 7 seconds for them. Penalties, we had 5 and they had 6. So let's get into passing. So last game, Josh Rosen was 17 for 24, 70.8% completion percentage, 180 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and an 88.9 passer rating. Definitely his best game. Again, the offense, it was the best overall showing for the offense last week, even though, again, they came off the rails completely in the second half, 100%. And, last week the defense didn't come out as strong as, we would have hoped. But for the season, he's 51.2% completion percentage for 482 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and a 57.7 passer rating. Now, Colt McCoy played against the Patriots, and so that's another thing. The Redskins have gone through 3 different quarterbacks. Colt McCoy has played, Dwayne Haskins has played, and Case Keenum has played. Now, Case Keenum has played the most. Case Keenum is also going to play in this game versus us. And so I brought up his statistics from the last game that he played in, which was against the Giants. Although, in that game, he didn't play for very long. In the first few games that he played for a lot longer. And I'll actually give you a little bit of a breakdown, though, and some comparisons for those other games that he played so you can get an accurate look at Case Keenum and how he's doing. But anyway, so that was Josh Rosen and his statistics. So Case Keenum in his game against the Giants was 6 for 11. Again, he didn't play very much. 54.5 completion percentage, 37 yards with just an interception and a 23.7 passer rating. But on the season, overall, he's 68% completion percentage for 970 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 93.8 passer rating, which is obviously, across the board, far better than Josh Rosen. Although, again, Josh Rosen has ultimately played, less than Case Keenum has. But, I would also say that Josh Rosen has less to work with as well. So that's even more reason to give Josh Rosen the benefit of the doubt. But the statistics up to this point do bear out that Case Keenum is playing more efficiently, even though, and part of that is he does have a better overall cast and so on and so forth. But real quick though, so he did play the first game against Philadelphia, which obviously was a loss. All their games were a loss, but they were pretty competitive. It was a 27-32 loss, right? He started that game, but he had 30 completions out of 44 attempts with a 68.2 percentage, 388 yards, and 8.6 average, and 3 touchdowns in that game, right? With a 117.6 rating. In the game against Dallas, their second loss, it was a 31-21 loss. So Case Keenum, up to this point, obviously gives the Redskins the best chance to win, and they've certainly scored the most points in those games, right? Because I think Dwayne Haskins started in the Giants against the Giants. There was a 24-3 loss. They just lost to the Patriots 33-7. Excuse me, I thought it was to 6, but 33-7. And Colt McCoy started that game. But anyway, in Dallas, he had 26 completions out of 37 attempts for a 70.3 completion percentage, 221 yards, a 6 average, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions in those first 2 games, right, with a 103.5 rating. So clearly, out of all the quarterbacks that they have on the roster, yes, they've cycled through them. Dwayne Haskins is the young up-and-coming guy with the most potential, but Case Keenum clearly, to this point, gives them the best chance to win. And so the fact that we have to play against Case Keenum is probably the worst thing as far as the quarterback situation goes, right? So we would rather have either Dwayne Haskins or Colt McCoy. But it looks like we're going to get the worst situation in that regard. But let's go to rushing statistics. Kenyon Drake led the way for us last week. 9 rushes, 44 yards, and a 4.9 average. Mark Walton had 6 rushes for 23 yards and a 3.8. Steve Sims led the way for them. 1 rush of 65 yards and a touchdown with an average of 65 yards. Obviously, that does, bloat the statistics a little bit. And obviously, a 65 average. It was one. He broke the pack, managed to get through the Patriots defense there. And that is a one-off. Although he certainly has a far better chance, or they have a far better chance of doing that against our defense comparative to the Patriots defense. So the fact that they were able to do that against the Patriots defense doesn't really bode well for us, although it's also not a guarantee that it's going to happen. And Raekwon McMillan is really, really good against the run, so we'll see how that plays out. But then Wendell Smallwood had 6 rushes for 27 yards with a 4.5 average. Not bad. Chris Thompson had 4 rushes, 21 yards with a 5.3 average. And Adrian Peterson threw in 7 rushes, 18 yards with only a 2.6 average. But clearly they got, a solid run game there. Good guys, both the relatively proven veteran and Adrian Peterson, although he has been falling off obviously the past few years, which is understandable, a guy of his age at his position. But they do have a stable of backs that are more than capable to do some harm against a rushing defense that is pretty inept to this point. They have improved, so let's see if they're capable of doing that against the Washington Redskins in this next game. Receiving, Devontae Parker led the way for us, 4 out of 4 for 70 yards and a score. Preston Williams was 4 of 7 for 46 yards. Kenyon Drake was 3 out of 5 for 29 yards. Mark Walton was 2 of 2 for 11. Nick O'Leary 1 of 1 for 19. And Kalen Balazs 1 of 3 for 10. Now let's also note that we lead the league in dropped passes percentage, which is almost at 20%. It's 19%. So that clearly needs to improve if we're going to have any kind of chances. We do get Allen Hurns back, and there is potential against that Washington secondary, but it also depends on if that front 7 is able to cause disruption against us. I feel pretty confident that they're going to shut down our run game and make us one-dimensional. And then it's going to be up to Rosen in this offensive line and the receivers. So, can the offensive line give him time? Or is Rosen going to be harassed all day long? And is he going to get sacked a bunch of times, which is a definite potential. They sacked Brady a bunch of times. So if they can do that, they can certainly rack up some sacks against us. And then how's he going to perform? I mean, I think that, if he has time, he'll perform well. Because, I do think he's a solid quarterback and has potential and certainly a lot of upside and can be a good quarterback in this league. I don't think it's going to end up being for the Miami Dolphins by any stretch of the imagination at this point. But, if he's got time, sure, he can perform well. The big question there is will he have time? And if he doesn't have time, my guess is that he might do all right for a few plays because he did show some poise early on the past couple games when pressure initially started getting to him. But as it kept getting to him, he clearly started to get shook, started to make, worse decisions, got more frustrated, and more flustered and stuff like that as the game went on. And clearly the offense just totally fell apart in the game last week and the week before, right? So in our past 2 games. So I mean, we'll see how much our offense is able to do there in the passing game. I think it's going to be a really rough day for our offense, most notably, but it really all hinges on whether or not their defensive front 7 is able to create havoc against our offense. That's going to be the big thing, right? Is our offense going to be able to run the ball at all? Are they going to be able to prevent themselves from being one-dimensional? And then if they do end up being one-dimensional, which I think unfortunately is a pretty high, which has a pretty high likelihood, then how are they able to manage that? And unfortunately, I think based off of even going back to how he performed last year behind a terrible offensive line, it just doesn't bode well. So we'll see how it goes. I think unfortunately it's not going to be a very good game. I think we're going to stay pretty true to what we've seen to this point. Although I don't think we're going to get blown out. So, you know, or even mini blown out. Anyway, I'll get to my prediction, and you know, at the end of this. So Terry McLaurin led the way for them, 3 out of 7 for 51 yards. Trey Quinn was 3 of 4 for 18 yards. Chris Thompson was 3 of 7 for 17 yards. Jeremy Sprinkle, 2 of 3 for 17. Paul Richardson, 2 of 2 for 14. Now their two major tight ends are out, and a lot of those guys, I don't even know who the fuck they are. But our secondary is super banged up right now. So when it comes to the defensive side of the ball for us, I mean, you know, we'll see, right? So let's real quick get into defensive statistics. Last game, we had 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 passes defense. They had 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 passes defense. No forced fumbles or fumble recoveries, no interceptions, but 4 sacks against Brady and 5 tackles for loss, 3 passes defense. There is a definite chance that they perform, you know, either to that level or even better against us and our offensive line. But we'll see. We'll see. So, I mean, look. At the end of the day, I believe this is going to be where Washington gets their first win. It's going to be a home game for them. We're going to be on the road. We're super beat up, especially across our defense, but even, you know, across the offense at some key positions, not to mention Jakeem Grant is likely going to be out. So that's our main punt and kickoff returner. So our special teams even could take a hit in that regard. They are across the board better than us. You know, statistically speaking, I mean, look, I don't think that we're going to get blown out, but I do think that our offense is going to get pretty shut down because I think that their defense is going to cause havoc. My prediction is that our run game is once again going to get stifled. We're going to end up one-dimensional. Josh Rosen is going to get harassed back there. I hope to God that he doesn't get hurt or anything like that. He has had a couple minor scares already behind this offensive line, so I'm praying for the kid that he stays healthy and doesn't get injured. But I think he's going to have a really rough day. I do. I think that defensive front seven is going to harass the shit out of him. And so, most notably because they're going to shut down our run game and then they're going to create havoc in the pass game. I think that they'll probably win the turnover battle and the time of possession battle. I mean, I think our defense overall is going to keep us in this game to a degree. But I think that once again, they're just going to break down, especially since our secondary is super banged up. They're going to get worn out because they're going to have to end up playing too much. I think it's probably, you know, I don't think we're going to score that much. I think we'll probably end up getting a touchdown. I think that we will score a touchdown against this team. I'm going to say, but I also think that it's probably going to be overall a pretty low scoring game. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of points scored altogether. So let's say we get 10, you know, we'll match our season best to this point. Or nah, you know what? And actually, this is getting pretty specific, but I'm going to say we're going to score 9 points because Sanders will once again miss an extra point or miss something that's, you know, easy and he shouldn't miss. So I think he'll miss an extra point, or we'll go for 2 and fail on the 2-point conversion. One of those two things will happen, and so I think that we'll only end up getting 6 points from the touchdown. We'll score a touchdown, but it'll be 6, and then we'll get a field goal, so we'll end up having 9 points. And then I think the Skins will end up having, because I think that they might score more points than what you might think, because I think they'll probably end up getting a defensive score, whether it's a scoop and score off a fumble or like a pick 6 or something like that, or even if it's just that they end up like, you know, getting a couple turnovers and capitalizing on those turnovers. So I say, let's say, and again, I don't think that they're gonna like blow us out for sure. I don't think that they're even going to go mini blowout, which again, I say starts at 15 points. But I do think that there is a substantial possibility that they beat us by at least a touchdown, potentially even 10 to 14 points. So let's say we get a score of 9 and they get a score of, let's say they score another touchdown, 13 points. So 13 points more than us, which would be 22. So 22, it's going to be a 22 to, which 22 is not out of the realm of possibility for them. They scored 27 points in their first game, I think 21 in their second game. So they could score that. So that's reasonable. So I think I'll go with a score of 22 to 9 Washington Redskins. They get their first win and go 1-5 on the season, and we drop to 0-5. And yeah, so as much as I hate to bet against the team, I mean, I got to be realistic, and you know, because I mean, at the end of the day, like, if it was a situation where I felt like we were going to be, you know, reasonably competitive, even if I thought we were going to lose, I would say that, but I'd still be like, yeah, but you know what? I think that the Dolphins can squeak it out. I mean, it's just like none of these games are like that. Even this one, I don't think is going to be even like that close at the end, right? You know, I think that we might keep it kind of close for a portion of the game, maybe, you know, the first half or whatever. But I think that, and again, I don't think that we're going to lose to the same degree that we have the past, or for the first 4 weeks. But I still think that they're going to end up beating us by 13 points. It's going to be a 22 to 9 game. And relatively low scoring overall. And both teams overall stick to what the what their league standings are currently. You know, I think we stay pretty true. I think both teams stay pretty true to form, especially because they're going to have Case Keenum, the best performing quarterback they've had to this point. And against a beat up secondary, they've got a strong front seven against our really weak offense. So that's what I'm saying. 22 to 9 Washington Redskins victory. We'll see, man. Hopefully, I mean, what I will say is I hope they can surprise me, man. I hope they can overcome. I hope they can, I mean, you know, we had hoped that the rest was going to give them an opportunity to come back healthier, you know, after the bye. But honestly, we actually got more hurt. We added guys. We added Kalen Ballage and Xavier Howard and Johnson Batamosi, right? I mean, we had to promote a guy from the practice squad because we're so banged up. I mean, so we'll see, guys. I hope that they can, but you know, I'm going into this game with the expectation that it's not only going to be a loss, but it'll be a 22 to 9 Dolphins loss. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. I know it's, you know, it's not as flowery and, you know, full of what I would consider false hope and false optimism. But, you know, I understand it's not full of that. But look, I hope that you guys can appreciate, because I'm just keeping it real with you guys. I'm giving you all the statistics and, you know, all of the facts, the undeniable facts. And then I'm just trying to give you the best evaluation that I possibly can. Obviously, I give you the perspective of as many different, you know, reporters and writers and media guys and stuff as I possibly can, so that way you have all of the information, because that's what I care about. I care about facts, data, I care about context, I care about all of that stuff, and giving you guys the best and most accurate evaluation possible. So with that, I'm gonna get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy all that. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.